a groundbreaking theory on biblical prophecy. One author lays out his case for an Islamic antichrist. Plus, from Miss America to the anchor desk, Fox News star Gretchen Carlson shares the real story of her life. And then,
excruciating pain.
a bad fall
I was in a coma.
and a broken neck.
I was also on life support.
Watch her walk again
He has just blessed me so much.
on today's 700 Club.
Hey, we're delighted to have you with us. We're going to look at depth as to who the Antichrist is. I think you'll find that interesting. People always say, what about this Antichrist person? Well, who is he? Is he a Roman? Is he an Italian? Is he a German? Or is he a Muslim? We'll talk to an expert on that and also meet a very charming lady who is a Miss America, who will be interviewed by our Miss America, Terry Musin. But in the news, it's a steady drumbeat of death, and it's inexplicable, as more than 16,000 fighters from 90 countries are racing to join ISIS. Today, 3 British sisters may have taken their 9 little children, some as young as just 3 years old, to join the Islamic Caliphate.
Well, another British citizen, this one a teenager, became the youngest suicide bomber ever for the group. And even here in Virginia, a teen pleaded guilty to recruiting for ISIS. Heather Sells has the latest.
In Northern Virginia, a 17-year-old honors student, Ali Amin, faces up to 15 years behind bars for helping another teen travel to Syria to join ISIS.
Amin worked to create a prolific online presence that included more than 4,000 followers on his Twitter account.
In Britain, a family is shocked by the death of their teenage son, who reportedly killed himself in a suicide bombing for the Islamic State in Iraq.
The fact that some of these youngsters are still going over there, I find really worrying, actually. I sort of despair to go and fight for such an organisation as that. And of course, once they're there, they're swept up into this, and they actually lose. They can't really control things. It's easy to brainwash them.
So what draws these young people to join ISIS and other militant Islamic groups? Recruits are promised a glorious afterlife, as well as a sense of purpose, camaraderie, and belonging in this life.
When you repeat every day to young 16 or 18-year-olds that jihad is best and you will get into paradise, these children think it is right.
Mohammed Nidalha looks at pictures of the son he says he'll never see again, a boy who suddenly took up with ISIS with only a quick goodbye over the phone.
On his way to Syria, he called his sister from Turkey and said, "I love you. I love Mama. I love Papa, but I'm going to Syria."
20-year-old Rita Nidalha was normal, growing up in the Netherlands, interested in girls and discos, until he was wooed by extremist recruiters.
Those people are professionals. They know exactly who their prey is. They pick on the easiest prey they can easily brainwash.
It's estimated that as many as 15% of the recruits are killed in battle, and that those who return will come back hardened by fighting and trained for war.
I don't get the same son as before. I get a totally different son back. My son might be able to make bombs now. Maybe he can shoot.
Raising the fear that the returning recruits will carry the jihad to their home countries. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, that's the way it is, but I tell you what, if they don't have any faith to believe in, then it's so easy to win them to something else. Kids are idealistic. They want faith to believe in, a cause to fight for. They want something that sings in their heart. And if Western civilization and all of its tinsel doesn't appeal to them, then what's left? Well, here's their chance to reach paradise and get 72 virgins in the process. Well, it's not all bad news on the terror front. The U.S. has just eliminated Al-Qaeda's second-in-command. An airstrike took him out. John Jessup has more on that story from our own CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat, that's right. Al-Qaeda is confirming its number 2 leader has been killed in Yemen. The terror group issuing a video statement saying that its war on America will continue despite the death of Nasir al-Wahishi. Al-Qaeda announced his deputy will now assume his role. The death of al-Wahishi is considered the harshest blow since Osama bin Laden was killed by Navy SEALs 4 years ago. Al-Wahishi once served as bin Laden's personal secretary. He oversaw Al-Qaeda's Yemen branch, which has long been seen as its most lethal, even attempting a number of foiled attacks against the U.S. homeland. Well, Texas is bracing for more flooding as Tropical Storm Bill bears down today from the Gulf. Parts of Houston are still under water from recent flooding, even before the rain begins. Road crews are out in force, hoping to prevent more flooding like the disaster that unfolded over Memorial Day. They're clearing drains, checking pumps, and barricading trouble spots to keep drivers from getting trapped. Residents are making plans too, some choosing to stay home from work to avoid potential problems. The terrifying shark attacks in North Carolina this past weekend are reminding people that beach season can also mean shark season. 2 teenagers swimming in waist-deep water lost limbs in 2 different shark attacks on Oak Island. The attacks occurring within 90 minutes of each other. Now fears are spreading to other states. Last week, a boy was bitten by a shark in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And take a look at this video of 2 sharks spotted at Waveland Beach, Florida. Experts recommend avoiding the water when it's dark or at twilight hours and staying away from piers where fish are drawn by bait. Well, one of the most influential Christian women of our times has died. Missionary and author Elizabeth Elliot passed away at the age of 88. Her words, books, and radio broadcasts has touched the lives of millions. But as Wendy Griffith reports, the people who knew her say those aren't the things by which she wanted to be remembered.
You are loved with an everlasting love. That's what the Bible says.
She loved words and she loved communication with me. She was Aunt Betty and I was little Stevie boy, and I loved her deeply.
Steve Saint is the son of one of the other missionaries killed with Elliot's husband Jim during their time with the Ecuadorian Indians back in the 1950s. He says that while Elliot was well known for many things, it's her faith that people should remember.
I'm very sure she would not want to be remembered as a great writer, as a great speaker. She would want to be remembered as a girl, a woman who trusted God to use her, and he did powerfully.
Janet Wismer would agree. She founded and was the first producer of Elliot's radio program, Gateway to Joy. She remembers how their relationship started.
I wrote her a letter when I was a silly 21-year-old, having read her book, Let Me Be a Woman. And she answered within a week. I had a postcard from her, and that just spoke volumes to me. She took a personal interest in everyone that she met.
God used the death of Elliot's husband and his friends to reach millions. She wrote several best-selling books about their story and those of her and other wives who later lived among the tribe that killed their husbands in order to translate the Bible and bring them the gospel. She was also known for her books and teachings on Christian principles, for relationships, masculinity and femininity, with an emphasis on lordship and obedience. It was a message she often repeated on her radio program.
Let God be God. We so often think we are in control, and then when things are out of control, we are reminded that we never were in control in the first place.
It was something she applied throughout her life, including her final years when she was diagnosed with dementia, an illness her family says she accepted, knowing it came as no surprise to the Lord in whom she trusted.
And underneath are the everlasting arms. This is your friend Elizabeth Elliot.
Pat, Elliot is being hailed as a Christian pioneer.
Well, an amazing woman. Jim Elliot, he graduated from Wheaton College, went out there, and said, it is no fool who will trade what he can never lose for what he can never gain. And they surrendered their lives so that those Auca Indians and the Ecuadorian jungles would come to Jesus, and they all got martyred down there. And that started something. And the next thing you know, Elizabeth Elliot and some of the others were living with those Aucas and leading to the Lord. And we had one of the Aucas here on this program, and he was just so excited about knowing the Lord. But they suspected the white people. They thought they were bringing them diseases and were going to take them and kill them and eat them. And I mean, it was just awful. So, but they went down there unarmed and without any support except the Lord. And their sacrifice led to a huge influx of missionary work around the world. Elizabeth Elliot, amazing woman. She was here on this show some years ago, and very charming and very regal in her demeanor. Terry?
Well, many Muslims believe that an Islamic savior is going to arrive on earth and usher in the end times. He's known as the Mahdi, but some Christians have a different name for him, the Antichrist. Find out why. That's next.
Okay. Welcome back. You're watching the 700 Club, and I want to tell you about prophecy. Many people are concerned about it. I don't spend a lot of time on it, but nevertheless, it is forefront in many people's lives. And both Christians and Muslims believe in the idea of end times. And Christians are looking for the second coming of Jesus Christ. But Muslims have a very different idea of how the last days will play out. Take a look.
Millions of Muslims around the world are awaiting the appearance of an Islamic Messiah, known as the Mahdi or the 12th Imam. Various branches of Islam have differing beliefs about the Mahdi. Shiite Muslims, for example, believe their savior was once alive but disappeared and will emerge a second time from this well, located in a small village in Iran. Sunni Muslims also believe in a savior, but they believe the Mahdi is Muhammad's successor and is yet to come to earth. Author Joel Richardson has written several books on how Islamic beliefs relate to biblical prophecy, and his research suggests that the Mahdi of the Muslims and the Antichrist spoken of in the Bible are the same person. In his book, Mideast Beast, Richardson argues that the Antichrist will come from the Middle East and not from Europe, as has been widely taught by many modern prophecy teachers.
Well, Joel Richardson joins us right now. His work is very fascinating, and Joel, it's good to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
Hey, you've done extensive research. Do you speak Arabic, or you know Arabic?
No, not fluently, just a little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Well, how did you get into all of this understanding of what the Muslims believe?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Now, my heart for so many years has really just been to reach Muslims. And so since probably the mid-90s, I've been reaching out to Muslims evangelistically, sharing the gospel. And so most of my conversations are theological, so a lot of the Arabic that I do know are the theological terms more than conversation.
Well, you know, the Schofield Reference Bible has got so many mistakes in it, it's just appalling, but it has dominating the thinking of evangelicals for years. And one of the things is that the Antichrist has got to come out of Rome, and the 38th chapter of Ezekiel they've made it also, it's Moscow and so forth. All right, you debunk most of that. Tell me what the great flaw is in evangelical thinking on this matter.
Well, there's a handful of things, but really through a misinterpretation of a few key passages, primarily Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream of this big metallic statue, as well as Daniel 9:26, which refers to the people of the prince to come. Those are the two pillars, the two passages that have been misinterpreted to conclude that the Antichrist would be this suave European. But when you look at those in proper context, they actually don't point to Europe, but rather the Middle East. And so that's what I deal with in Mideast Beast.
A lot of us have struggled with the 38th chapter of Ezekiel because that seems to speak of a final battle, and yet it just doesn't look like it's the battle. And most people say, well, okay, that's one battle, but that's not really Armageddon, that's another battle. And they've got Rosh, the prince of Meshech, and Rosh and Meshech and Tubal and so forth, and they say, well, that's Russia. And there's a coalition that comes against Israel in the latter days. It seems relatively specific. Now, talk about that. You know, Gomer was said by, the evangelicals, that's Germany, and, Rosh is Russia, etc.
Right. Yeah, so essentially what happens is you begin with this false premise that the Antichrist would be European.
Right.
So then you come to this passage that speaks of this invasion of Israel, but they're clearly Middle Eastern nations. And so what they've all done is said this must be a different invader, this must be a different group of people rather than the Antichrist. Ezekiel is telling the same story that all the other prophets are telling.
Let's go over those people. I mean, you know, Gomer, I mean, under the evangelical point of view, that would be Germany, but you said, no, it's Turkey, right?
Yeah, essentially, there's two methods of interpreting these names.
Right.
One is where you're trying to trace them genetically down through history.
Okay.
That's what some of the, Hal Lindsey, some of these guys have done. That's how they try to argue that Meshech is Moscow and this sort of thing. But the more responsible evangelical hermeneutic would be called the historical grammatical perspective, which is simply to look at how did Ezekiel and his immediate audience understand these names. Mm-hmm. So if you open up any Bible atlas, evangelical Bible atlas, it's going to point to Asia Minor, a modern-day Turkey. That's Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, Togarmah, and Magog. 5 out of the 8 names listed are actually in Turkey, and it says Gog, which is another name for the Antichrist, is the leader of Turkey. And so the Bible's very specific that he would come from that region.
Magog is in the Bible Atlas. They can open a Bible Atlas and there it is, right?
IVP, any number of conservative evangelical, they're all going to point to Turkey.
How do these preachers get so far off course then? I mean, they have big audiences listening to this nonsense.
We tend to be very good students of our teachers and not always very good students of the scriptures, unfortunately. Yeah.
All right. Gog, that's the one we all think about. Gog and Magog, the hordes have come. And you say Gog and Magog come out of a Bible, I mean, they're biblically located in Turkey, Anatolia.
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. Asia Minor, Anatolia. And they are the leaders of this coming invasion of Israel. And it concludes, what's so essential is that when you look at this invasion, people say, well, they get wiped out before they even come in. That's not true. As a direct result, in chapter 39, verses 17 to the end of the passage, as a direct result of the destruction of Gog and his hordes, it says that Israel will come to know the Lord. No longer will he allow his name to be blasphemed. He will pour out his spirit on Israel. Those things happen at the return of Jesus. They don't happen several years prior. So it's a distortion of the text to say that this is speaking of anything other than the Antichrist.
Well, again, back to Ezekiel, which is, you mentioned in your book, and I totally agree, we cannot focus our prophetic teaching on apocalyptic literature such as Daniel or Revelation. It's just too many symbols. But there are clear passages, and that's why we can focus on Ezekiel. It's pretty clear. They've got Iran, Persia, and you've got the Sudan in there, Cush, and I guess maybe Libya, I don't know. But and then this other part, we've said, well, that's up in Europe, that's Rosh. Now, Rosh in Hebrew means head, but they say that means Russia. How do they get Russia out of head?
Well, yeah, you've got 602 times the word Rosh in Hebrew is used in the Hebrew Old Testament, and 601 times it's translated as head or chief. But for some reason in that one text, because it sounds like Russia, going back to the Schofield Reference Bible, a lot of Westerners have tried to use that to say it's a proper noun pointing to Russia. Modern Hebrew, the consensus of modern Hebrew scholarship says that's nonsense.
Well, it would be either the head or the chief prince, or the chief of this group.
It would be used in the same way that it's used throughout the rest, is simply
Rosh
an adjective.
Hashanah, head of the year, okay.
Rosh Kodesh,
Kodesh, okay, all right. Well, what are the Muslims doing that make them look like they fulfill this prophetic word?
Well, we need to understand that the scriptures are thoroughly Israel-centric, right? And so the primary barometer for the Antichrist spirit are those nations that are possessed with that satanic, demonic hatred of the Jewish people, that demonic lust to possess the land of God, the promised land. So the anti-Semitism, the anti-Zionism, and as well as if you just open the Quran, it's thoroughly anti-Christic. It actually says if you believe Jesus is the Son of God, you're the greatest blasphemer imaginable. It is the one sin that's completely unforgivable. If you say that Jesus is the divine Son of God, he died on the cross, the Quran names the most essential foundational doctrines of the Christian faith and calls it the worst, most gross form of blasphemy. So, I mean, it doesn't take great discernment to look at this and say, this is that which the prophets were speaking of.
Right. Let's talk about this Mahdi. They look for this 12th Imam, the Mahdi, and as I understand, they think he's in a well in Qum in Iran, and they've actually built a highway up there from Tehran. But what do they think is going to happen in the last days? What do they teach?
Yeah, so whether we're dealing with the Shia Muslims or the Sunni, they're all waiting this Messiah figure known as the Mahdi, as well as Jesus, who they say is going to be a Muslim.
Okay.
And they're waiting for these two to come back to cause Islam to be supreme throughout the world, to revive Islam, to defeat all the other faiths, and to amazingly establish the seat of global Islamic authority on the Temple Mount. This is what their prophecies say their Messiah figure will do in the last days.
But Jesus will be figured into that, but as a subservient figure?
Yeah, they teach that Jesus comes back and he prays behind the Mahdi as a sign of subservience to this other messianic figure.
Well, that is about Antichrist as you can get.
It's what I call an anti-parallel. They've basically taken the biblical story of the last days, flipped it on its head. It's a mirror image, and they've made all the bad guys the good guys to the point where now, and again, we need as Christians, we need to look at this and say, Satan has set Muslims up, and you know we can discern and look at it. It's interesting, but we need to be praying for Muslims and say, God, break the blinders and deception off of their eyes.
You bring out something in one of your books about black flags. Where is that? And that's what the ISIS has, is black flags. They're waving over these conquered territories.
Yeah, in their prophecies, it says in the last days, you'll see black flags coming from the east, marching to Jerusalem. And it says, when you see the black flags, even if you have to crawl over snow, go and give your allegiance to that army, because that is the army of the Mahdi. And so these followers of ISIS, these kids being recruited, they are being swept up. They believe that they are, you know, part of the unfolding of Islamic prophecy. They believe they're in the last days, and they're going for broke.
We have a president who thinks that you could sit across the table with Iranian leaders and cut a deal that will limit nuclear weapons, but they're not going to give up their religious beliefs because of our president, will they?
No, you know what's amazing, Pat, is that secular critics will watch this show and they'll say, oh, Pat Robertson just had this apocalyptic, crazy Christian guy on.
Yeah.
But here's President Obama giving the most apocalyptic and genocide. They openly declare they want to commit genocide, wipe out a nation, and he is opening the door for them to eventually achieve nuclear capabilities. The most apocalyptically driven government in the earth, 1,000 times more violent, active, aggressive, and crazy, and yet they'll defend Obama's actions. This is, you know, I always try to give the president the benefit of the doubt. This is insane. This is insane.
You know, Ahmadinejad spoke at the United Nations about the Mahdi, and he said that there was like a bright light that surrounded him, that he was enveloped in this spiritual experience, and that he was taking the rest of the United Nations with him. You remember that? What he had to say?
Yeah, that was September 2005.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Stood before the UN General Assembly and just prayed for the coming of the perfect man, the Mahdi. This was really the first time the West started paying attention.
Mahdi, it's the M-A-D, but you pronounce it Mahdi? Mahdi?
In Arabic. In English, you could just say Mahdi.
Okay.
But in Arabic, it's Mahdi.
Oh, Mahdi.
And then in Persian, it would be Mahdi, basically.
But that's the foundational belief of those Shiites who run that
dominate the country.
Well, they dominate the country, but it's run by the mullahs. It's not a secular state at all. It's a religious state. There is no way they're going to surrender those beliefs.
No, Iran they are some of the most firm. They have firm convictions, and Iran is playing the long game. Everything they've said that they're going to accomplish, they have accomplished. And the final step is they're achieving nuclear weapons so as to establish their Shia version of Islamic dominance over the region. And we really do have a Sunni-Shia regional war, World War III emerging right now, right before us. Turkey versus Iran, Saudi Arabia versus Iran. This whole thing is right on the edge of exploding.
Well, if Turkey's going to lead this coalition in the Ezekiel context, when are they going to turn? I mean, what if they're Sunni? Are they going to? Well, Erdogan just got beat, and so he was establishing a Islamic regime, and that's gone down in flames. You know, the foundation of modern Turkey was secular, and are they going to turn, though, Islamic, or what do you think is going to happen if they're the leaders of this coalition?
The AK party under President now Erdogan, we have seen an Islamist revolution in Turkey. They've taken over now. He just did suffer a massive defeat in that he was not able to establish complete dictatorship, but he's not out for the count. The AK party is still the majority in the country, and the Kurdish party that surprised everyone and took 10%, they're very conservative, and most of them have supported the AK party in the past. So, you know, Turkey has undergone an Islamist revolution, but it's the government. Many of the people, of course, are opposed to this dictatorship, but we will see, I believe, in this regional conflict between Iran and Turkey, I believe Turkey over the next decade will achieve dominance, and it will be out of, we're going to see some wars. There are regional wars that will unfold.
Well, how about up in the Caucasus? Those people are pretty strongly Muslim right now, the stands. Are they going to be into this coalition, do you think, in Ezekiel?
I mean, probably. You know, a lot of the Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, a lot of them are, because of the Turkic ethnicity, would sort of go with Turkey. But, you know, each nation, Tajikistan, for instance, is really trying to resist extremism. You know, it's all up in the air. And I would say to the people in those nations, pray for your country. You know, don't give up. I don't want to get into fatalism.
But you see wars. There's going to be wars. I mean, there's... well, now, how about Saudi Arabia? When you look at prophecy, you also see the time when Israel and Egypt and Assyria are going to make an alliance. They will be one before the Lord.
Thank you for bringing that up.
All right,
this is the wonderful thing, is that, first of all, the point in all of this is, one, Islam's not going away until Jesus returns. And two, you cited Isaiah 19, there is going to be a great harvest, a great revival among the Islamic world. The Lord's calling Muslims out, and they will be part of His kingdom. And we, the church, if there's one application to this material, we need to give ourselves to the Islamic world, to lay down our lives, to complete the Great Commission, and to snatch as many as we can from the fire, because they make some of the most passionate, fiery followers of Jesus. And I've got to see some of that and be part of it. And it's one of the most exciting things that the Lord's doing in the earth right now.
We have 50 million hits on our Arabic language website, and the Muslims are they are horrified at what they're seeing from ISIS. But okay. Well, now, one last thing. Now, we've gotten Ezekiel, but how does Ezekiel turn into the Antichrist, the 38?
Well, I mean, essentially, it's just Gog is simply another name for the Antichrist. You know, if you read Jewish literature in the Talmud, they say this is the final invasion of Israel. After he's destroyed comes the Messiah. When you look at the end of this prophecy, this oracle, Ezekiel 38:39, it ends with Jesus on the ground, in the land. It says, all the nations will know that God is the Holy One in Israel. It's the only time that specific phrase is used, the Holy One, not of Israel, the Holy One in Israel. And it actually says that His face will be seen. A lot of people miss that point. This is essentially the second return of the Old Testament. It describes God as coming to Israel to deliver them from this invasion. And it ends, by the way, with the great feast, the feast of the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, which is the same feast that's then referenced in Revelation 19 at the return of Jesus.
You know, I read somebody that the buzzards were coming back, and I was traveling through the valley of Jezreel, and I saw one bird. I said, "Is that a buzzard?" And the guy said, "No, it's a stork." I didn't see a single vulture. I went all the way up on the Golan Heights, and no vultures, so they're not there yet to eat the flesh of captains. But in any event, soon, later, how do you see it?
Well, you know, it's closer now than ever before.
Yeah,
but the point is that you can look at the nations, you can see the landscape, and it's coming into focus. And this needs to drive us to urgency, to proclaim the gospel, to declare to the Islamic world, Jesus loves you. He died for you. Islam is not the answer, and we need to be about the business of completing the Great Commission.
Amen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is another one. Joel Richardson, he goes into great length to rebut some of the people who have put out theories that are contrary, and I think it's detailed and it's the kind of thing you want to study, but it's available. Mideast Beast, Joel Richardson. Joel, thank you for your research and what you're doing. God bless you.
Bless you, Pat. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, Terry, now you know about the Antichrist, and hold on to your seatbelt because the rockets are fired up.
Yeah. Gonna get the book. Yeah. Well, still ahead, she's been called a dumb blonde and, oddly, the smart Miss America. So who is the real Gretchen Carlson? We're going to find out after this. As the host of Real Story on Fox News, Gretchen Carlson interviews newsmakers and tackles the top headlines of the day. Today, she's getting real on a more personal story, her own. Gretchen Carlson captivated the country as Miss America in 1989. Today, she's captivating audiences as an award-winning journalist and host of The Real Story on Fox News. But things didn't always come easy for Gretchen. In her book, Getting Real, she shares lessons from her early days as a reporter and how she overcame her childhood insecurities through courage and perseverance. Gretchen Carlson is with us now, and Gretchen, it's so great to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And you and I have known each other for so long because we also share the Miss America legacy together.
But we don't often get to just visit with each other and sit comfortably together and talk unless we go back to Atlantic City or wherever. So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
You have taken it upon yourself to battle the stigma that goes with not just being Miss America, but being blonde and being a first. I mean, you moved into the news arena when there weren't a lot of women in news, but go back to the very beginning. I mean, here you are, you're a well-studied classical violinist. You graduated from Stanford, studied at Oxford, and still you've had to contend over the years with the whole dumb blonde thing. How is that possible?
I know, it's amazing. It happened right after becoming Miss America, actually. It's almost as if your entire resume just evaporates, and suddenly it's just a lot easier to call you a bimbo. Mm-hmm. And that came as a real shock to me, Terry, to be honest with you, because I grew up in Minnesota, and I know you understand the Midwest as well.
Wisconsin girl,
and the Minnesota nice thing is so true, and so the fact that people were just tearing me down just because was really shocking. And my dad gave me some of life's greatest advice at that time. And everyone loves my dad, so it meant even more coming from him. He said, you know what, Gretchen, no matter how hard you try, you are never going to get everyone to like you. Yeah. So stop trying with those that you can't change and do your best to change as many as you can. I think about that every day.
That's a life lesson for all of us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that people say to you, you talk about this in the book, and I think this is true for many people who've had visible success in their lives. You know, you're so lucky to have gotten the breaks that you've gotten. Truth is, behind all that you've accomplished is a tremendous amount of hard work.
Yeah, it comes from the Protestant work ethic. My grandfather...
Minnesota thing again.
Yeah, my grandfather was a Lutheran minister in town, and so I was so fortunate to have faith as my foundation in my life. He also taught me perseverance. He started our church at 800 members, and when he left, there were 8,500.
Wow.
So I learned the never give up attitude ever, and work hard. And my mom, when she would put me to bed at night and say my prayers, every night she also said, you know, Gretchen, you can be anything you want to be.
Wow.
And so I built my self-esteem from the inside out, and it's such an important lesson for our young people today.
And sometimes, Gretchen, those lessons come from struggling through what other people put in front of you. I think of, you talk in the book about the fact that at one point in your life, as a very young girl, you dealt with weight issues.
Oh, yeah.
But it changes the way you see yourself. And then, was it your brothers who used to call you Blimpo? I mean, I look at you now, you're about as big as a minute, and I think, how's that possible?
Oh, no, and I still struggle with it today. I've just learned how to deal with it a little bit better. I'm 100% Swedish. I come from good Swedish stock.
Meatballs.
I mean, my mom used to say, look at our great-grandmother's legs. They start here, and they go like this all the way down. There's no indentation. So that's what I was born with genetically. I was a fat kid. I had a lot of taunts and a lot of teasing, But here's the lesson in it. I built me from my soul.
Yeah.
And that is so important. In a way, it was a blessing that I was fat. And right after I won Miss America, I said in the press conference, as an inspiration to young girls, I was fat. And look what happened. If you work hard, you can become Miss America too. And my brothers called me Blimpo. And I went to the airport, and all the rags had my picture on the front cover, and it said, Blimpo wins Miss America pageant.
Girl, you learned the lesson that you cannot be really candid.
Well, I learned that, and now I'm in the business, Terry. But I learned it.
It's your grace for others, right?
I do, but I learned early on. But you know what? I'm not giving up the fight. I still talk about it to inspire young people. I still talk about my faith. I'm one of the very few national news anchors who is free to talk about her faith. And there's something about turning 40 where I just really I just don't give a rip anymore. And I take a lot of criticism for it.
Yes.
But I'm going to continue to stand up for what I believe in.
It really, really does. You were a prodigy, really, as a violinist as a child. You played with some of the best. Do you miss that? Is that because it can't be a part of your life. To do that, you have to make a choice. You know, you're either totally committed to that or committed to family and your business.
And that's such an important point that you bring up. And actually what happened at age 17 is that I burned out. I thought that was going to be my career. And my mom said to me, oh, please find another way in which you can use this talent. And she got the brochure in the mail about Miss America. And it said 50% of the points were based on talent. And she called me at school and she said, I found something for you to try. And I said, no way. So she's very motivational, and she encouraged me to do it. And I guess the point of my book is that life works in mysterious ways, as we know.
Isn't it curious?
And I have gone off in many different directions and accomplished different things along the way. And none of them ever came easy, Terry. I got fired the week after I got married. And my boss said to me, you'll be fine now that you have a husband.
Yeah.
That was my self-identity. And I have great empathy for anyone who has ever been fired or is still unemployed right now, and they're wondering, how am I going to get out from underneath this? And it was the toughest year of my life, and thank goodness that I had faith as my foundation to help me through.
Sometimes you're in those waiting periods, and that's what happened to you, where you wait for the phone call, the right phone call to come, and you trust that it's coming because you know you've worked for what you've accomplished. But you had to wait. There was a season of waiting after you got fired before you got what you were going to do next, and then moved on to New York. And so for people who are in that place you're talking about, sometimes the waiting is part of the process.
The waiting, and also realizing inside of yourself that you may have to take a step back to get back into the game. So when I finally took that next job, or was lucky enough to get another job, it was a step back. But in my mind, I said, thank you, Lord, for giving me this opportunity, and I'm going to work triply hard to make it worth my while.
That's a big message in your book, is about how hard you've worked, had to work, been willing to work, because sometimes it is, you know, you often hear in today's world where sometimes, especially younger people without jobs, will say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But you jumped into every door that God opened for you with both feet. The book is called Getting Real. What do you want people to know about you that they might not know, Gretchen?
I want them to know that I've also struggled, and that through my faith as my foundation, that has kept me going. And that I am the biggest proponent for women and for helping them. I think it's so important. I want to inspire young women to be anything that they want to be. My door is always open.
Well, again, I want to say the book is called Getting Real. It releases nationwide today. Don't forget, you can catch her hosting Real Story on Fox News. It's weekday afternoons. It is wonderful to have you with us, and great to just have a minute to sit down together and
catch up. We could go on and on.
Yeah, we could. We could do a week, Gretchen, pretty easily. We're going to be back with more of the 700 Club right after this.
Coming up, a murderer kidnaps a mom in a story ripped straight from the headlines. Get an exclusive look at the upcoming thriller, Captive, when we return.
And
And welcome back to the 700 Club. The Chinese government is tearing down a multi-million-dollar church, leaving the congregation high and dry. China Aid reports that officials had approved the Three Self-Patriotic Church in the city of Wenling. Now it's being destroyed on government orders. The church will be allowed to relocate, but it's only receiving compensation for 1/6 of what the building was worth. China's government has also been tearing down crosses from church buildings and arresting Christians who oppose the destruction of the crosses. Women seeking abortions in North Carolina won't have to view an ultrasound before the procedure. That's the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. A lower court had struck down the state's law that made abortion doctors perform and explain the ultrasound. The High Court upheld that ruling. And the justices also weighed in on a Mississippi abortion law. They rejected an appeal to reinstate the law that required abortion doctors to have admitting privileges at local hospitals. That decision allows Mississippi's only remaining abortion clinic to stay open. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com. Pat and Terry will be back with more of the 700 Club right after this.
On March 11, 2005, an accused rapist named Brian Nichols escaped custody and murdered 4 people, including a judge and a federal agent. Nichols then carjacked several vehicles and a manhunt ensued. At 2 in the morning the following day, a young mom named Ashley Smith was walking towards her apartment when Nichols appeared and held her hostage in her home. What happened next is the subject for the upcoming movie Captive. And for the first time anywhere, the 700 Club has a sneak peek. Take a look.
Mommy. Hey, baby girl. I love you. I love you too. I'll send my prayers for you. I hate this car.
I lost everything. My husband's dead, and they said I was an unfit mother. Took away my little girl.
Have you heard of this book? Help me.
You're late, Ashley. The lady dropped this off for you.
When I heard I had a son, I had to break out.
Breaking story right now. Police looking for this man.
Murder suspect Brian Nichols.
I want eyes in the sky. All choppers up now. Let's flush Nichols out.
My name is Ashley Smith. I'm a mother.
I don't trust you, Ashley. You scream again, and I will have to kill you.
I need to see my daughter.
You're not going anywhere.
God, please help me.
You call me out upon.
What is that? What are you doing?
Just a book.
Read it to me.
If you want to know why you were placed on this planet, you must begin with God. He expects you to make the most of what you have been given.
I haven't been given anything.
You have a son.
Christopher, it's your daddy. You're gonna hear some bad things about me. Whatever happens, I love you, little man.
The greatest tragedy is not death, but life without purpose.
Stand up! Could you forgive me?
I don't know, but maybe God can.
Captive. The movie opens in theaters on Friday, September 18th. It's rated PG-13, and if you want to see more of this real-life tale, head to cbn.com. Reporter Tim Branson had the chance to sit down with Ashley Smith in a classic 700 Club story. Well, next up, your email questions. Deb says, my new iPad uses a thumbprint to unlock it. Could this be related to the mark of the beast? Stay tuned for Bring It On after this.
To see this week's top on-demand videos, go to cbn.com.
Well, we want to take some time to bring it on with the email questions that you've submitted. Pat, this first one comes from Deb, who says, my spouse bought me a new iPad yesterday. I let him load it, and it requested either a thumbprint or a password. When he asked me to give my thumbprint, I walked away and said, fingerprints are for criminals, and I won't submit to one in my own home. Plus, I felt this had Mark of the Beast written all over it. I feel I'm right by refusing the fingerprint, but he doesn't think so. What are your thoughts?
Well, it also says you can have a password, and I don't see anything wrong with having a password. I've got a password on mine that you hit 4 digits and the thing turns on. So
I used to use that on my phone, and I went to the thumb because you just push it and it opens it up. I mean, it's my personal phone.
I don't think that's the mark of the beast. I think the whole idea of the Antichrist is that your forehead is your volition, your hand is your action. And what it says is I'm giving my volition and my action to an alien religious being. And I don't think putting a thumbprint on an iPad is exactly doing that. All right.
Okay, this is Mill, who says, I truly need your help. I've been a member of a church for over 10 years. We've never missed a time paying our tithes. The problem is, lately, I've noticed that things are not being done with the tithes as the Bible says. There are new motorcycles purchased, RVs, and so on. There are no programs to help the poor or to help those in need who attend the church. I feel the tithes are being used to benefit the pastor and his son's singing career. I've not been able to go back there because of the issues that are going on. I still pay my tithes, but I'm thinking about stopping. I want to do God's will, but this isn't right. Please help. I want to do the right thing.
Well, a church normally should have a board of deacons and maybe trustees that handle financial matters. There's a misuse of funds. I don't know how much of that may be illegal, actually, but whatever it is, it's wrong. The first thing you might do is to bring this up with the congregation or with the elders or whoever runs the church you're in and see if they can't do something about it. But on the other hand, it's so easy to, in today's world, to go to another church. You just say, see you later, and you go down the street to the next church.
But if you had questions like this, you wouldn't keep paying your tithe there.
No, you wouldn't. But in a sense, the tithe belongs. You're not giving to the minister; you're giving to Jesus. And but in any event, go ahead. That's the deal. If you really want to do it right, go to the elders and say, "Look, there's a serious problem we've got to deal with," and maybe they can correct it, and life will go on as normal.
Right. Okay, here's a viewer who says, I've heard that we can receive certain crowns in heaven depending on what we have or haven't done here on earth. I'm someone who's never had a physical relationship of any kind. Will I receive a crown if I remain a virgin until the day I die? And what are some of the other crowns one can also receive?
I don't know, but crowns being given to virgins. Do you know anything?
No, I really don't.
I mean, the whole idea of virgin is that in biblical context, that prostitution is giving yourself to a demonic being, and you've kept yourself free from that type of heresy. But the book of Daniel says, "They that lead many they that are wise shall shine like the stars, and they that lead many to righteousness like the stars in the sky." So that the idea of having wisdom and doing evangelism is like the stars. So, but it doesn't necessarily say stars and crown, but it says you'll be like the stars. All right.
Okay, this is Martha, who says, these days the world is full of technology. I want to say that I hate Bible apps because some people are not using real Bibles. The Bible is a powerful tool from God. Even some pastors are using their computers to read Bible verses instead of real Bibles. I think it's wrong. What do you think?
Well, I mean, hey, I get that Kindle thing, and I have dozens of books that I get on the iPad, and I read them on the iPad because it's
They're
easy.
as real as if you hold them in your hand.
You hold them in your hand, but the thing of it is you can get them, you call up and they put the book on your machine, and it takes them about 60 seconds to unload a whole book. And there it is before you see it coming on the machine, and it costs you a fraction of what it does if you buy it in hardback. So there ain't nothing wrong with that. But on the other hand, some of these Bible apps, I agree, if it slices and dices the Bible, you need to have the Bible in context. I like a book in terms of the Bible where you can study it and turn the pages. But as far as fiction, hey, I read them by the handful. All right.
Okay, this is Mary who says, my live-in boyfriend is verbally and physically abusive. Although he's been in jail for it, he can't get his temper under control. He's a good man underneath his anger. I believed I could love him enough to make him want to change. I believed I could be an example for him. I also believed this is what God wanted me to do. Now I have doubts and fears that I may have taken on more than I can handle. It's not an option to just leave. I can't walk away, but I don't think this is going to work. Please help me.
Tell you what, God does not want you to live in a relationship of common law or activity. You're not married. You know, there was a woman by the well in Samaria, and Jesus said, give me some water. And she said, well, you know, all that stuff. And he said, well, go call your husband. And she said, I haven't got a husband. And he said, you're right, you've had 5 of them, and the one you're living with isn't your husband. But you know, you shouldn't, that relationship you've got is wrong, and you need to get it straightened out and legalized. Well, we leave you with, well, that's all the time we've got, and we